Have you ever wondered whether drinking alcohol is right or wrong in God's eyes? Some say the Bible approves of it, while others claim it strictly forbids it. With so many opinions, it's easy to feel confused or even guilty about your choices. The truth is, many people look at just a few verses and form quick conclusions, without seeing the full picture. But what does the Bible really say? Does it accept drinking in moderation, or does it completely condemn it? In this guide, we'll explore Scripture in depth, bringing clarity to this important question. By the end, you'll have a clear biblical understanding, free from confusion and doubt, so you can make choices with confidence and peace. Stay tuned to find out the answer. But first, before we proceed, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, so that way you will receive the latest videos about the Bible, so you can always know how to follow the path of love and peace. Now, onto the video. Imagine you're exploring your attic and come across an old, mysterious chest covered in dust. Excited, you open it and find a weathered, ancient-looking map inside. The map has strange symbols, hidden messages, and a path that seems to lead to a great treasure. But there's a problem. If you only look at one small part of the map, you might misinterpret where it leads. You could end up walking in circles, following the wrong path, or even missing the treasure entirely. Now, think of the Bible as that map. To truly understand what it teaches about a topic, like drinking alcohol, we can't just focus on a single verse or passage. We need to study the whole picture, considering different scriptures and their context, just as we would carefully follow all parts of a treasure map. Many people approach the Bible differently. Some read one verse that mentions wine and immediately conclude, "The Bible approves of drinking." Others see a passage warning about alcohol and say, "No, the Bible completely forbids it." But this is like trying to navigate using only a tiny piece of the treasure map. Without seeing how everything connects, we risk misunderstanding what God is really telling us. The truth is, the Bible talks about wine in different ways. In some parts, it seems like something good, even a gift from God. Wine was used in celebrations, religious ceremonies, and daily meals. In other places, the Bible strongly warns about the dangers of drinking too much, showing how alcohol can lead to reckless behavior and serious consequences. These different perspectives might seem confusing at first, but when we put them together, we start to see the full picture. It's not about whether wine is good or bad in itself, but about how it is used. Understanding what the Bible really says requires patience and careful study. Just like an explorer wouldn't rush through reading a map before setting out on a journey, we shouldn't rush to conclusions about what the Bible teaches. Instead, we must take the time to gather all the pieces and understand them in their proper context. So, before we answer the big question, does the Bible accept or condemn drinking? Let's take a journey through Scripture. Let's explore different passages, understand the historical and cultural context, and see how all the pieces fit together. Only then can we truly grasp what the Bible teaches about alcohol. After all, if we want to find the right path, we need to follow the whole map, not just one small part of it. Are you liking the video so far? So make sure to leave a like down below, that way I can make more videos uncovering the Bible. Before determining whether drinking is right or wrong according to the Bible, it is important to examine all relevant passages carefully. Many people form their opinions based on a single verse or a limited understanding, which can lead to misinterpretations. The Bible contains a variety of references to alcohol, some that appear to be positive and others that issue strong warnings. Because of this, a balanced analysis requires looking at the full biblical context rather than relying on isolated verses. A proper understanding of the Bible's stance on drinking involves studying different passages in both the Old and New Testaments. Some verses mention wine as a blessing or a part of religious ceremonies, while others highlight the dangers of excessive drinking. Since these perspectives exist side by side, it is essential to determine the intended message behind each reference. Additionally, cultural and historical contexts play an important role. In biblical times, wine was a common part of daily life and often safer to drink than water. It was used for celebrations, religious rituals, and even medicinal purposes. However, the Bible also acknowledges that excessive drinking can lead to negative consequences, such as impaired judgment and destructive behavior. One of the best ways to gain a deeper understanding of the biblical perspective is to begin with the Old Testament. This section of the Bible provides foundational teachings on wine and its role in society, both in religious practices and everyday life. By carefully examining these passages, it becomes possible to develop a clearer view of how drinking was perceived and regulated in biblical times. The Old Testament contains numerous references to wine, showing that it played an important role in ancient societies. It was used in religious ceremonies, celebrations, and even as part of offerings to God. However, the Bible also provides warnings about excessive drinking and its consequences. Understanding these references helps provide a balanced view of alcohol in biblical times. One of the earliest mentions of wine in the Old Testament is found in Genesis 9 verses 20 to 21, where Noah, after surviving the great flood, plants a vineyard, makes wine, and becomes drunk. This passage illustrates both the existence of wine in early biblical history and the problems that can arise from overconsumption. Similarly, in Proverbs 23 verses 29 to 35, wine is associated with sorrow, strife, and poor judgment, highlighting the dangers of drinking excessively. Despite these warnings, wine was also considered a blessing. In Psalm 104 verses 14 to 15, it is described as something that gladdens the heart of man, suggesting that, when used responsibly, it was seen as a gift from God. Additionally, in Deuteronomy 14 verse 26, people are instructed to use wine in their religious celebrations, reinforcing the idea that its consumption was not inherently sinful. These Old Testament references demonstrate that wine had both positive and negative aspects. It was valued for its role in religious and social life but was also recognized as something that could lead to trouble if misused. This dual perspective sets the foundation for the more detailed teachings on alcohol found in the New Testament. Psalm 104 verses 14 to 15 provides an important perspective on the role of wine in biblical times. The passage states, "He makes grass grow for the cattle and plants for people to cultivate, bringing forth food from the earth, wine that gladdens human hearts, oil to make their faces shine, and bread that sustains their hearts." Psalm 104 verses 14 to 15 NIV. This verse suggests that wine, like food and oil, is a gift from God meant to bring joy and nourishment. The mention of wine gladdening the heart implies that its consumption in moderation was seen as a natural and positive part of life. Just as bread and oil serve essential functions, wine was considered a normal and beneficial part of human experience. In biblical times, wine was often included in meals and celebrations. It was commonly consumed during religious festivals and used in temple offerings. This aligns with the idea that wine was not inherently bad but rather something that, when used appropriately, was accepted and even valued. However, it is important to note that while Psalm 104 highlights the positive aspects of wine, other passages in the Bible provide a contrasting view, warning against excessive drinking. This reinforces the idea that wine itself is not condemned, but rather the way it is used determines whether it is beneficial or harmful. By looking at Psalm 104 verses 14 to 15 in the broader biblical context, it becomes clear that wine was recognized as a source of joy, but its use required wisdom and self-control. This balance is a recurring theme in both the Old and New Testaments. The Bible's wisdom literature, particularly the book of Proverbs, offers valuable insights into the responsible use of alcohol. Unlike historical narratives that simply describe events, wisdom literature provides direct teachings about human behavior, choices, and their consequences. This includes clear guidance on the benefits and dangers of drinking. Proverbs presents two contrasting perspectives on alcohol. On one hand, it acknowledges that wine can bring joy when used in moderation. On the other hand, it warns of the serious consequences of excessive drinking. Proverbs 20 verse 1 states, "Wine is a mocker, strong drink is raging, and whosoever is deceived thereby is not wise." KJV. This verse suggests that while alcohol exists and is commonly consumed, it has the potential to mislead and cause harm. The word mocker implies that wine can give people a false sense of confidence or control, leading them into reckless behavior. The phrase "strong drink is raging" warns that stronger alcoholic beverages can cause anger, conflict, or loss of self-discipline. Another passage, Proverbs 23 verses 29 to 35, provides a detailed description of the effects of excessive drinking. It describes the physical and emotional consequences of intoxication, such as dizziness, confusion, unnecessary conflicts, and a lack of awareness about the dangers surrounding a person. The passage concludes with the warning that those who drink too much will seek more alcohol, falling into a cycle of dependence. Despite these warnings, Proverbs does not call for a complete rejection of alcohol. Instead, it promotes wisdom, self-control, and careful decision-making. The message is clear. Wine itself is not evil, but misusing it can lead to serious problems. This theme of balance is consistent throughout biblical teachings on alcohol. By examining wisdom literature, it becomes evident that the Bible encourages moderation rather than outright prohibition. The focus is on maintaining self-control and avoiding behaviors that lead to harm, a principle that carries into New Testament teachings as well. One of the most well-known references to wine in the Bible is found in the New Testament, when Jesus performed his first recorded miracle at a wedding in Cana. In John 2 verses 1 to 11, Jesus turned water into wine after the wedding hosts ran out, allowing the celebration to continue. This event is often cited as evidence that drinking wine is not inherently sinful, as Jesus himself created and provided it for the guests. The significance of this miracle extends beyond simply supplying wine for a wedding. In biblical times, weddings were major celebrations that could last several days, and running out of wine would have been a great embarrassment for the hosts. By transforming water into wine, Jesus demonstrated his power and compassion while also fulfilling an important cultural expectation. Additionally, the quality of the wine was noted as being exceptionally good, which further highlights the positive portrayal of wine in this context. Jesus also referenced wine in his teachings and parables. In Matthew 9 verse 17, he used the analogy of new wine being placed into old wineskins to illustrate the importance of accepting new teachings with an open heart. Similarly, wine played a central role in the Last Supper, where Jesus shared a cup of wine with his disciples and established it as a symbol of his blood in the new covenant, Luke 22 verses 17 to 20. This sacred use of wine in communion continues to be an important practice in Christian traditions today. Despite these positive associations, the New Testament does not ignore the potential dangers of alcohol. While Jesus never condemned drinking itself, his teachings consistently emphasize self-control, wisdom, and avoiding excess. The Bible warns against drunkenness multiple times, making it clear that while wine can be enjoyed, it must be used responsibly. By examining the role of wine in Jesus' life and teachings, it becomes clear that the New Testament does not prohibit drinking but instead encourages moderation and responsible behavior. This aligns with the broader biblical perspective, which acknowledges both the benefits and the risks associated with alcohol consumption. In the New Testament, the Apostle Paul addresses the topic of alcohol on several occasions, providing practical guidance for Christians. One of the most notable references is found in 1 Timothy 5 verse 23, where Paul advises his young disciple, Timothy, saying, "Stop drinking only water and use a little wine because of your stomach and your frequent illnesses." Neve. This verse is significant because it demonstrates that wine had medicinal purposes in biblical times. Water sources in the ancient world were often contaminated, leading to digestive issues and illnesses. Wine, which had natural antibacterial properties due to fermentation, was commonly used to purify water and aid digestion. By instructing Timothy to drink a little wine, Paul highlights that moderate consumption was not only acceptable but beneficial for health reasons. However, it is important to note that Paul emphasizes moderation. He does not tell Timothy to drink excessively or for pleasure but rather to use wine carefully and in small amounts for his health. This aligns with the broader biblical teaching that warns against drunkenness while acknowledging the practical uses of wine. Paul also addresses the issue of alcohol in the context of Christian leadership. In 1 Timothy 3 verses 2 to 3 and Titus 1 verses 7 to 8, he outlines the qualities required for church leaders, stating that they should not be given to drunkenness, but should instead be self-controlled and respectable. This reinforces the idea that while drinking itself is not sinful, excessive consumption and loss of self-discipline are serious concerns. Additionally, in Romans 14 verse 21, Paul advises believers to be mindful of how their actions affect others, saying, "It is better not to eat meat or drink wine or to do anything else that will cause your brother or sister to fall." Neve. This passage highlights the principle of personal responsibility. Even if drinking is not inherently wrong, it may be wise to avoid it in situations where it could lead others into temptation or spiritual struggle. This demonstrates a recurring biblical theme. Moral choices should be guided not just by personal freedom but also by love and concern for others. Through Paul's teachings, it becomes clear that the Bible does not issue a blanket condemnation of drinking. Instead, it promotes wisdom, self-control, and consideration for others, ensuring that alcohol is used responsibly and never in a way that leads to harm. While the Bible does not prohibit drinking, it repeatedly warns against drunkenness and the dangers that come with excessive alcohol consumption. Throughout both the Old and New Testaments, drunkenness is associated with poor judgment, moral failure, and spiritual decline. These warnings serve as a strong reminder that self-control and responsibility are essential when it comes to drinking. One of the most direct warnings comes from Proverbs 23 verses 29 to 35, which vividly describes the negative effects of heavy drinking. Who has woe? Who has sorrow? Who has strife? Who has complaints? Who has needless bruises? Who has bloodshot eyes? those who linger over wine who go to sample bowls of mixed wine. Do not gaze at wine when it is red, when it sparkles in the cup, when it goes down smoothly. In the end it bites like a snake and poisons like a viper. Your eyes will see strange sights and your mind will imagine confusing things. You will be like one sleeping on the high seas lying on top of the rigging. They hit me, you will say, but I'm not hurt. They beat me but I don't feel it. When will I wake up so I can find another drink? Neve. This passage paints a striking picture of the harmful effects of excessive drinking, including physical harm, impaired thinking, and addiction. The warning is clear. While wine may appear enjoyable at first, overindulgence leads to suffering and regret. The New Testament echoes these warnings. In Ephesians 5 verse 18, Paul instructs, "Do not get drunk on wine which leads to debauchery. Instead, be filled with the Spirit." Neve. Here, drunkenness is directly contrasted with being filled with the Holy Spirit. This suggests that alcohol, when consumed in excess, can lead a person away from God's will, promoting reckless behavior instead of spiritual growth. The Bible acknowledges that Christians have freedom in many aspects of life, including the consumption of alcohol. However, it also emphasizes that this freedom should be exercised with wisdom, self-control, and a sense of responsibility toward others. Drinking is not presented as a sin in itself, but the way a person chooses to drink can have moral and spiritual consequences. One of the key biblical principles related to Christian freedom is found in 1 Corinthians 10 verse 23. "I have the right to do anything," you say, "but not everything is beneficial. I have the right to do anything, but not everything is constructive." Neve. This passage highlights that even if something is not inherently wrong, it may not always be the best choice. In the case of alcohol, a Christian might be free to drink, but they should consider whether doing so is truly beneficial for their well-being and for those around them. Paul also stresses the importance of not causing others to stumble in their faith. In Romans 14 verse 21 he writes, "It is better not to eat meat or drink wine or to do anything else that will cause your brother or sister to fall." Neve. This principle is especially relevant in situations where alcohol consumption might lead others into temptation or struggle. For example, if a Christian is around someone who has battled with alcohol addiction or believes that drinking is wrong, it may be wiser to abstain out of respect and love for that person's convictions. Another key aspect of Christian responsibility is maintaining self-control, which is a fruit of the Spirit, Galatians 5 verses 22 to 23. While moderate drinking is not condemned, any behavior that leads to a loss of self-discipline is discouraged. Christians are called to be alert and sober-minded, 1 Peter 5 verse 8, ensuring that their actions align with their faith. Ultimately, the Bible presents a balanced perspective. Christians are not bound by strict prohibitions regarding alcohol, but they are called to exercise wisdom and consider the impact of their choices. Whether someone chooses to drink or not should be based on personal conviction, guided by biblical principles of love, responsibility, and self-control. After examining various passages from both the Old and New Testaments, it becomes clear that the Bible does not outright forbid drinking, but it does provide strong warnings about excessive alcohol consumption. The biblical view on alcohol is one of balance. While wine is sometimes described as a blessing and even used in religious practices, drunkenness is consistently condemned as harmful and sinful. In the Old Testament, wine was commonly consumed in social and religious settings. Passages such as Psalm 104 verses 14 to 15 present wine as a gift from God that brings joy, while wisdom literature like Proverbs warns about the dangers of drinking too much. These teachings highlight that alcohol itself is not inherently evil, but the way it is used determines whether it leads to positive or negative consequences. The New Testament continues this balanced perspective. Jesus himself drank wine and even performed a miracle to provide it at a wedding, John 2 verses 1 to 11. Wine was also a key part of the Last Supper and remains significant in Christian communion. However, biblical figures such as Paul emphasized moderation and self-control, warning against drunkenness, Ephesians 5 verse 18, and encouraging believers to avoid actions that might cause others to stumble, Romans 14 verse 21. The Bible ultimately places responsibility on individuals to make wise decisions about alcohol. Christians have the freedom to drink in moderation, but they must consider their own self-control, their influence on others, and their commitment to living a life that honors God. The guiding principles are clear. Drinking is not a sin, but drunkenness and lack of self-discipline are serious concerns. Each person must carefully examine their own beliefs and circumstances. Some may choose to drink responsibly, while others may decide to avoid alcohol altogether, either for personal health or spiritual reasons. The key is making choices that align with biblical teachings on wisdom, self-control, and love for others. In this video we learned a lot about the Bible and whether Christians can drink or not. Did you know all those facts? Do you agree with what I said? Write your thoughts in the comments down below and let me know your opinions.